Now, residents of Khuma, a township in Stilfontein, are calling for the reopening of an abandoned mine to create jobs and boost the local economy. However, experts warn that reviving the mine may not be financially viable or safe. Joining us to discuss this is Yasmin Omar, a lawyer representing the Society for Protection of Our Constitution. Yasmin, good to speak to you. Now, let's just go back a few weeks when many of those individuals were brought to the surface. Many bodies also brought to the surface at that time, and much has happened in the last few months. What are the lessons that we've learnt from what's transpired in Stilfontein?
Good day. Thank you so much for having me. I think what has happened in the last month in the ongoing Stilfontein saga is very important for the country and for the development of our law and especially our constitutional law in the country. You will remember on the 10th of January, this matter was seized by the Constitutional Court, and all of the various aspects of this matter were placed before the court, including the police need to engage in policing in this fashion. And you will remember that the application was pursued by Zinzi Tom, one of the members of the mining affected communities, who asked the Constitutional Court for relief to bring out the people who were stuck underground in the Stilfontein mine. And what was admirable was the Constitutional Court's rejection of any kind of excuse that will prevail over the right of life. The Constitutional Court had simply no tolerance for administrative and bureaucratic measures that the state organs said they had to engage in, such as service level agreements and all of that. The court said the government must immediately take steps to rescue those people underground. So what is an important precedent set by the Constitutional Court in that matter is above anything else, the right to life reigns supreme.
So what's the conversation that residents and community members of Khuma have been speaking about? Speak to, well, let's reopen this mine, right? It's been a source of livelihood, right? The taxi operators were enjoying business. The industries, various industries, small to medium enterprises were flourishing. Now, is there something that community is missing? I mean, what are the legal and constitutional implications of reopening the Stilfontein mine?
Well, you know, we need to look at the option of reopening, and this is not what should be the immediate concern. The immediate concern for everybody in the face of the number of lives that were lost underground was the failure by the previous mine owner to properly close that mine. So that mine was supposed to be closed, and part of the closure procedure for mines is rehabilitation. So insofar as the community is talking about reopening, I don't think it should be talk of reopening, but rather rehabilitating that mine to prevent deaths and loss of life like we've seen. The rehabilitation process will allow for jobs to be created, and the local community can be given jobs, and there can be a fair amount of work created for Stilfontein if we engage in that rehabilitation exercise. Without that closure having been done, we see the disaster that has unfolded. And what is also important is for government to play a more proactive role and a more transparent role. What we've seen in the past is that the mines have stood back in the face of deaths in those mines. We haven't had government or the mine owners come forward and explain why those mines were not properly shut down.
So let's talk about that process, Yasmin. When a mine ceases to operate and the owners decide, okay, it's no longer viable for us to continue running this mine, and they choose to then pull out, what is it that they legally are obliged to do? And what is the government doing to ensure that those legal obligations are indeed carried out?
Absolutely. Now, there are numerous requirements set out in the Mineral Resources and Petroleum Act. There are regulations for how a mine must be closed, and that requires the rehabilitation exercise that I just spoke about. Now, what is noteworthy is a few weeks ago when we had the rescue operation being put into effect, and the minister, Mantashe, was at the mine. He came to the mine and watched the rescue efforts there being carried out, but there was no question as to why the closure hadn't been done properly by the mine owners. And up to now, we haven't had an explanation from government or the mines as to why this wasn't done. In fact, what is really saddening is we've got the number of lives lost in the Stilfontein saga far more than the Marikana massacre. So we're sitting with a situation where there's even more loss of life, but government is even more quiet about this incident than they were in the Marikana incident. In fact, we've got a situation where there's a sense of apathy, there's a sense of like a don't care attitude by government. And my clients, the Society for the Protection of the Constitution, has indicated previously, there appears to be a complete lack of respect for the poor and the communities who are living in impoverished circumstances, like the people in Stilfontein. And it is as though the loss of these poor lives doesn't matter so much to government, that they haven't even come out and expressed sadness. They haven't called for mourning. There's no signs of regret by government. And this is a situation which should not prevail. So while we're talking about how people can benefit economically from the mine, we say it should be a closure exercise, a rehabilitation exercise, and that there should be a recognition given for the loss of the number of lives in Stilfontein.
Now, you've raised an issue that I want to touch on, and that's the issue around government's reaction to those many individuals that died underground, many of whom were illegal foreign nationals. Does it suggest that government might be avoiding a diplomatic spat with some of their neighbours if they did take accountability for those deaths?
You would imagine that. You would imagine that, especially because we've had a lot of those underground being foreign nationals, a loss of lives of foreign nationals, that government would have taken a more responsible attitude and actively indicated what their stance was. Instead, what government has done is turning a blind eye to the loss of life, and we're sitting with a potential problem with our neighboring countries, a potential diplomatic problem with our neighboring countries, where our government expresses an attitude that the lives of the poor and impoverished people who come into our country from neighboring countries are disposable. You will remember the attitude of government has always been that the people underground, they must see to themselves. We're engaging in a policing exercise and we're going to smoke them out. That was the attitude of government. In fact, when this matter went to court, instead of government taking a responsible stance to say, look, people, we want to do things, but we want to do it properly and safely for everyone, it was a battle all the way. They even asked for cost orders against the attorneys who came to court to bring this matter to the attention of the country and to the world. They sought cost orders against them. So whoever crosses the policy of government or the attitude of government, if government doesn't like it, they're going to ask for cost orders against attorneys. They're going to smoke people out. The attitude of government is an indication that we've slowly forgotten the struggle. We've forgotten how we got here to this democracy. And the rights in the Bill of Rights are now being overshadowed by the need to engage in a very aggressive form of policing and a very aggressive form of governing our people. So it is something to be concerned about. And had it not been for human rights organizations like the mining affected community, like Society for the Protection of our Constitution, like the various unions who stood up, had they not come forward, those people would still be underground and we would have lost a lot more lives than we recovered.
Yasmin, in 60 seconds, if you will, there are something in the region of 6,000 abandoned mines in South Africa, and some of those, I think, maybe 20 or 25% are said to be high-risk mines. Should government be taking a stance and acting to deal with the inevitable possibility of individuals, zama-zamas, whatever you choose to call them, going into those mines and trying to extract minerals?
Well, with those number of mines that are abandoned and the fact that government is saying it's going on a plan to get rid of illegal mining in the country, surely they ought to have engaged in more discussion with the public, discussion with the affected communities, discussion with those zama-zamas who are going underground as to the means of doing this lawfully. But knowing that this reality exists, instead of engaging with the necessary and interested parties, they've taken an attitude of retaliation and a harsh stance against those people underground. And we must remember, those who are going underground are not going there to have fun. These are desperate people coming from desperate communities. We'll also recall that earlier, I think a day or two ago, 4 police officers were arrested for being engaged with these illegal miners. This just adds another layer in an already intricate situation created by supposed illegal mining in the country. So it does require more discussion, and government needs to take a different stance as opposed to the one that they're currently engaged in of hostility towards these people.
Yasmin Omar, a lawyer representing the Society for the Prevention of Our Constitution. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into that conversation around illegal mining, particularly at Stilfontein.